sometime midnight, and I will go there. And do the roll call.
Present.
Alderman Dean.
Present.
Dennis.
Here.
Here.
Here. Oh.
My microphone, we just did the roll call and everyone's here. I'm here. And we will now have a moment of silence and then the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Motion to the agenda as presented.
So moved. Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Motion for someone to be your chair.
I would like to nominate Sheila O'Sullivan Feeney for chair.
I have a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Asked you if you were willing, but you didn't say anything, so.
Guess what? Too late.
I don't think I was, but we can pretend, but
I will turn
for, yes.
See, Dane, I was trying to get you
Just
to
keeping it
sit
warm.
there.
I was trying to get Dane to sit there.
I think I could.
Get the feel of it, right? In your future.
Right, so I move for our vice chair.
Yeah, you accept nomination for vice chair.
I accept the nomination for the chair and will gladly serve the township. I put forth a nomination myself for Cindy Mahalo for vice chair with her incredible wisdom, and we hope for her continued support.
I second it.
Yeah, then you
Call
just,
for a vote.
you call for a vote. As long as Cindy agrees, you
I agree.
usually, yeah, you at least want to make sure she agrees, but yes.
Nomination.
Call for a vote. All of those in favor of having wonderful Cindy Mahalo as our vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Thank you, Cindy, for serving. Our next motion is for election of secretary.
I nominate Joe to be our secretary.
I second the nomination.
And we all vote for our wonderful Joe Pinto to be our election of secretary. Joe, do you accept the position?
I gladly accept the
All right,
position.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion stands. Thank you, Joe, for serving.
And
Yes.
if I can, just for one quick moment, for those of you who just got elected, I know a couple of you are actually repeating doing this, but we have and anybody's allowed to attend, but we're requesting that the chairs and the vice chairs, and you'll get an invite, will come on the 30th. It's Monday, the 30th. It's actually a fifth Monday. So I'm using the fifth Monday in our favor this month. But we're going to have for the first at 6 o'clock, we're just going to have a time to go over, running a meeting, any questions that you might have as being the chair, and then start to get to know the other chairs and vice chairs of the other committees who have been elected. And then at 7 o'clock, we'll be bringing all of the secretaries in as well. And we'll be going over our software so that everybody knows how to use our software to for purposes of making the agenda and doing the minutes from the agenda. So just, that's what we're going to be doing on that night. And I've just been announcing that as we've gone along, but there'll be an official invite. I believe it's going to go out tomorrow. Let everybody know. We still have 4 committees that meet next week. And so we're trying to get everybody notified, but we're waiting until we get a good group to know who's doing what. So that's what we'll be doing. If you have any questions, I'm glad to help you.
All right. Item number 6, public comment for agenda items only. Look around for the public. Oh, there are no public items, so we will move to item number 7. Minutes, considering approving the minutes from December 5th, 2022. Anyone put forth a motion to accept the minutes?
Motion to accept. Seconded.
Motion was put forth and accepted for new business. All right. First of all, I think starting off without.
Did you vote?
No, we
Sorry.
didn't.
Oh, sorry. Voting for that. Motion to accept the minutes. All in
You have-
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
There you go.
All right. So new business, I think starting off 2023, I think it's important that we acknowledge all that Bruce Killian had done. He made great success last year. All the EAC members did. I think looking forward, we're going to be building upon that success. And I really look forward to everyone doing that. In new business, we were discussing, and we briefly brought up the idea of calendar events for 2023. And I know Bruce had mentioned, and Bruce did ask us to respond to himself or Janet, the EAC conference on February 25th. That's from 9 to 3. And was everyone able to respond back to Bruce on that?
Is anyone
I believe so. Yeah.
going
I
besides
think I
me?
did.
I'm going.
Good. good.
Is that a live event?
That's a virtual event from 9 to 3:30, and you can pick the events. You don't have to be at the entire event all day. But there's 3 different breakout sessions.
What's the date?
That'll be
25th.
February 25th from 9 to 3:30. And I do believe Bruce was going to check with the township that they were going to organize the registration. Is that correct, Steve?
They were going to pay for it. Bruce was going to request.
Yeah,
payment.
I mean, it's part of, I'm sure we have it in your budget for that kind of thing. So it's usually not a problem.
Well, who should I contact to make sure that Janet, myself, and who else is attending?
I'd like to attend. Yeah,
Dane and Joe?
if that's possible.
I think I have something that day. I'm not 100% sure. It's not on my calendar. but-
If you get the list, if you will send it to Rose Anicola.
Okay.
Rose is the one who is responsible, who's your admin support for
Okay,
this group.
great.
So I don't need payment because I was on the planning committee for this particular 25th, and I get a freebie.
Awesome. I'll be sure to, I'll make sure that Rose knows that, but to make sure that you're listed down, so you get the virtual link as well.
So will you respond to you or to Rose?
I think I'll put out an email to everyone just to confirm. We already know that Dane and Janet and I are going, just in case, Joe, you want to check your schedule and
Yes.
yourself.
Yeah, I think I checked at the time and.
There are some really important, there's Delaware County's
Yes,
system
sustainability.
sustainability program that will be excellent.
Right.
Periphery and townships, stormwater management. And I was really hoping if we get a chance to look at the actual schedule to see and make sure one of us is at least at every type of event as possible.
Right.
So we don't duplicate, but there was also a really nice one I thought you would enjoy on ordinances for rain gardens and meadows and how to help the township kind of facilitate that.
And Heather Andrews, I was the one who got her, made the contact with her. And,
Great.
she does thoughtful gardener. Perhaps you get her emails of her that she sends out on a weekly basis.
Right, so I'll send that email out to everyone and then we can all follow up. Just some keynotes, dates for you to kind of jot down. I understand March 25th is the CRC's cleanup at Drexel Lodge. That's the tentative date right now. I did check with Paul and with Wade Pollock to see what everyone's dates are. And I also reached out to Trish Adams for the shade tree to see what their dates are. So
I'm
I'll
sorry, what was that date?
March 25th, that'll be CRC cleanup at Drexel Lodge, tentative date right now. And in April, we've got a couple things. Trish Adams from the Shade Tree Commission will contact me next week, and we're going to coordinate with George the Shade Tree is willing and thrilled to have any help that we can provide with them in terms of having the Arbor Day event. I know George will need to kind of notify us if PHS has set up the date. I couldn't find it, an exact date as yet. But we know that Saturday, April 22nd is Earth Day and Arbor Day is technically April 28th, Friday. So we will see what's going on with that. And as I said, Shade Tree will also let us know. In addition, during one Saturday in the month of April, DCBA will have their watershed cleanup at Greer Park and Brookside, and Wade Pollock will get back to us on those dates. And I know Cindy, you had mentioned that your rain gardens cleanup will be, so we can just kind of coordinate that date around that.
Yeah, we'll work it out.
Perfect. And I understand also, the summer planting for Newtown Square and Bloom is Friday, the 29th as well. So that's into April. May 6th, we know that, Newtown Square is doing a planting on the 6th and the 13th. And the concert for parks may be May 13th or 20th, and EAC will have a table at that event.
I think Joe's trying to furiously write all these down.
Yeah.
Do we maintain
I got lost.
Do we
I
maintain
stopped.
an events calendar anywhere?
We've asked for a calendar, and I understand somebody's trying to organize that from the township.
That's fast.
I mean, we do put a calendar together from the township side when we know groups are doing things.
Right.
Yes.
So I think as soon as we coordinate with Shade Tree and we have that date locked down.
We're gonna have that meeting, and the whole purpose, I do a meeting typically with all of the chairs and the vice chairs. And last year kind of died towards the end of the year, but I want to do it every other month. So that we can touch base and know what everybody's doing and make sure our calendars are all together. So we'll have it at that time.
Perfect.
Are you gonna try to have that meeting in January or when?
Yeah, I'm good. On the 30th, we'll be,
We'll do our calendars at that time.
we can do calendars at that time. I'll let all the chairs know that as well.
Perfect.
So I'm working on for either the end of April or May, a bird walk at Garrett Williamson. They've graciously agreed for us to come in.
Great.
And I'm waiting for Mike McGraw to get back to me of what one of those 3 dates works for him.
Perfect. And I think you mentioned, and I offered to support you with the native plant pop-up garden and the sale. You talked about that in the December.
That's, I'm working with Kathy Cavalier as to when we could have a native plant.
Okay.
In combination with the historical society.
So I guess as soon as, at the end of the month, we'll have a better idea of when these things are all, but try to keep your April and May available because there's a lot going on. And I think what's really nice is we talked with Parks and Rec, their concert, if it's May 13th or the 20th, they've allowed and they will encourage us to have an EAC table there. And we will be able to kind of connect and do a member and resident engagement about EAC issues. And that will be really helpful as well. And that will be it for the spring, and we'll tag out all these dates in particular. All right, any other items for new business?
I don't know if this ties into it, but some of the printing jobs that, Cindy, I know you were also in touch with Pegasus. I got quotes for some of the items. Did you ever move forward with some of the rain garden signs? This might be old business, but
I did have a conversation in December with Harry at Pegasus.
Yeah.
About the signs, and yeah, he said that he had talked to Bruce about them, and he gave me the specs for the type of artwork that I need to provide. I need to provide artwork, so I need to engage with the graphic designer. That and
Okay.
I have someone who might do it. I asked her. But those would just be small, inexpensive.
Sorry.
The big ones. But yeah, I have to say that I'm just like wary of anything to do with finances and purchase orders and stuff like that. I mean, just from the way Bruce explained it to me, maybe it's like overly complicated and I'm just like, I feel like a deer in headlights when.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that at the meeting of the 30th as well. But I mean, hopefully it's not that difficult. I mean, we'll work with you on what you need to do. Really, at the end of the day, to get the purchase order, all we need is a quote for what it is that you're trying to do, and then where it's coming from out of your budget, and then we move forward. I think the biggest key is, if we were specific in the budget, you need to be specific on the quote, and that's the key. So, I know, and I don't recall your budget right now. I know we've talked about it. I don't recall what it was.
I believe
But-
it was like $8,000. That was the tentative number we heard last year, I think.
I have to look
Think
back
so.
at it before I committed to you, but I know that,
But we're talking not about the big signs.
Okay.
We're talking about the little signs.
Okay.
And you gave us a very detailed explanation of how we have to use whatever the category is, that
Yes.
the expense has to
Yeah.
logically fall within that.
Yeah.
So,
that's the key, but we can work with you on that.
All right.
but
So-
again, who is we? I had a question the other day.
Well,
Because I know your finance guy, your position is empty, right?
yeah, no, that's me. So,
Oh, my goodness.
yeah, I'm getting to do double duty. So so I'm probably not doing either job major justice, but, we have money in the bank, so I figure we're doing okay. But,
Lights are on.
yeah, we're keeping
Return
records, right? We're keeping records. I can't promise much else, but no, seriously, in that, I'm your staff liaison in that way, and then my administration person directly is Rose. Rose will be working with you in that, so you can always start with Rose Vanicola. If Rose doesn't know, which she probably at this point won't because she's fairly new still, she will come to me, or she would go to the finance person and say, where is this? The good news is we have a finance person that we're going to be recommending Monday night. I'm hoping that she's on board. She's telling me the 21st of February, she'll be ready to start. So, she's got to give her notice where she is and all of those good things. And so, but we should be, the good news is they kind of already know, because when we did the background check, we had to talk to a bunch of her current employer folks. And so, but I think she's giving notice either today or tomorrow. But we'll be voting officially on Monday night. The board's already given me kind of, yes, we're ready to go and that kind of thing. But
But to back to what you asked, Dane, one of the things that had come up in my conversations with Bruce about this is he was trying to do all these things to make it easier. And then he said, well, why don't we just combine everything with Pegasus? But
Yeah.
I don't know that that's going to make it easier. I think that's going to make it harder. I think you should just do what you want to do. I'll place my order. I
Yeah,
think-
just
Just-
as we, yeah.
the only thing I would just say is you're placing orders, just make sure we have the purchase order prior to the
Yeah.
placement of the order.
Him to layer, for us to layer on that thing that we've got to combine them.
Yeah.
I think we just each.
And I know he
pursue-
was trying to make it easier for us, but
Yeah,
yeah, I think, yeah, we'll figure it out. So do we still have access to the 2022 funds that were kind of allotted to?
No,
Not really.
that's one of the challenges.
Okay.
Once we, if
Use it or lose it.
we don't, it's not
Yeah, that's what I
it's
figured.
not a carryover.
Does that
what-
also apply, I'm sorry, to the $200 that came in through the Valley Forge Audubon Society that was for more plants for summer or fall? That was sent last year.
If that money is designated for something, then they would need to stay designated.
Okay,
If it hadn't been used for that purpose, you can't, if it's a grant or something like that kind of thing,
yes.
we have to use it for what it was for.
Okay, so it doesn't disappear because we. okay.
No, I don't know how it was
All right.
reported right now.
Okay.
Do you know when it came in?
Mid-year, mid
Okay.
2022,
And it was $200?
yes.
But is there, to your question, Dane, about the 2022 funds, if the purchase order had like already been cut? Or
I don't think-
something-
If a purchase order was cut and the product was ordered, that's not a problem. Yeah, we'll pay for it. It'd be out of those funds. If the purchase order was never cut And at this point, we can't go back and cut a purchase order out of those funds.
I don't think there was one.
Okay.
I mean, I was talking to Suzanne, about it.
Okay.
I thought she was going to ask you on the status of that, but again, it's already January 19th, so I don't think, I'll double check with her, but.
Yeah, I'll check with her also. I have a note here.
I will reach out to Bruce as well, because he mentioned that he was going to streamline the process a little bit and also give
Yeah.
us a flyer. Remember, he was going to break down all of our.
He did, he put Cindy and I in charge of
Yeah.
like 2 or 3 things.
Okay.
There was like 5 jobs that
Okay.
they had quoted, like a sign and, some stuff.
But, and then again, you said if a purchase order is cut from last year, that things could move forward. But that's different than a requisition, right? Because
Well, so in the realm of how this works, the requisition comes first,
Yep.
which creates the purchase order.
Right.
So we put a requisition in the system and it then generates the purchase order. The purchase order gets printed out and now you have the ability to go purchase. And like you should take the purchase order with you to, let's say, Pegasus, and this says, this is how much you can have for that particular project, whatever you're doing. So if that was done,
the
then,
purchase order,
so,
but
yeah.
is the requisition sufficient? Probably not.
Well, if the requisition was done, my guess is the purchase order was done. Because if the requisition was actually put into the system, it's literally a matter of somebody signing off and pushing a button.
So Dane, let's talk tomorrow, or the next day. I've got stuff in my bag.
Okay.
So let me know, yeah, and if you have any idea of when it might have been done, let me know and I can tell you whether it was officially done through the system.
All right, moving on to number 9, old business. 9.1, update on sustainable Newtown Square Green Business Coalition by Dane.
Yeah, so we had actually this morning, so joined Steve and Leonard, as well as the chief of police at the Newtown Square Business Association breakfast. And so I spent probably about 5 minutes talking briefly about all of the accomplishments, with Sustainable Pennsylvania. And then that parlaying into the initiative to engage businesses more. And so I think it was met with, not negative. I mean, it was mostly indifference. So there was a couple of businesses raised a hand that were interested. There's some questions that came up. I talked to D&K afterwards. Mostly people are interested in getting out and helping to, participate in stream cleanups, park cleanups, tree planting. So I think that's like a win right there, just to kind of open up some communication. And then, I think over time we'll start a dialogue around, single-use plastics and things like that. I think it's good. It's a sensitive topic. Paul is a big advocate and a big supporter. I also did write up a survey, right, to send out to businesses that include basically feedback on a plastic bag ban. I don't think it's going to go out just yet because I just want to make sure that we have, first of all, the website, we need to get the webpage. So I've been working with Suzanne on that.
Yep.
And I know she was looking into that this week, and I talked to Leonard yesterday about that as well. He was going to ask about that.
Okay.
So I don't know if there's any, issues or approval that's needed, or, I mean.
No, I
just a
think there
simple
was,
landing page.
I think what we were just making sure was that the board was in agreement with
Okay.
where we were headed, and I think we are okay.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Great. You did see that Havertown and Springfield and obviously as Radnor, they just enacted their plastic bans
Yeah.
went into effect January 1st. And I believe Havertown has a $500 fine per violation, which is rather stiff for businesses who don't comply. So great to see that. And Dane, so what can we do to help you move this forward?
I think just talking it up, I think once we have the information, but part of it was the brochures getting printed up, and then the website, the webpage on the township website. And then there's also decals too. So if any business is opting into it, they need to basically submit a pledge form on the website. And then that starts a dialogue where we can reach out to them and have a conversation with them, whether it's plastic bags, whether it's some other sustainable activity out there.
And when are you making the presentation to the business community?
So we had a basically spark, it was just very, very high level
Right.
today. Paul did invite us to a May or March. He needs to give me the date.
Okay,
Basically the next networking event or whatever that the business association holds. I think it's at TECA. He invited us to join and do a presentation. I think we need to probably get some content. So one of his suggestions was actually reaching out to Delaware County's sustainability coordinator, Francine Locke.
Yeah,
So I reached out to
right.
her earlier this week to see if we could have a conversation about like, what's the county doing? How can we kind of bring that down to our level as well? So I think it would be good to get like a couple of speakers or like one speaker to help us with that. So
and
that's what I'm
all
working on.
of us could come to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So-
Be informative.
Some of the business events and they're great networking opportunities.
Yeah, and there, we could probably spend a little bit of time on each topic, like Bird Town or,
Right.
Rain Garden, things like that. One question also came up. I don't know who the gentleman was. I'll ask Paul, but it was he was asking about electric vehicle charging stations and very optimistic about it. So, he was like, well, when are we gonna get charging stations on, in Newtown Square? So I thought that was good. So that could be an opportunity for us to explore. I know we talked about it a couple weeks ago. Or a
I
couple
think
meetings
there's
ago.
money available.
Yeah,
Like
from the
government.
state, and yeah, exactly. So, the work in progress here, but
Perfect.
I think we're on the right path.
I would
Yeah.
just say, I thought you did a great job in presenting today. We're very clear, concise. So I would say that though it was relatively quiet, I thought that it wasn't like
Everyone was eating, so.
yeah, I think it was accepted well.
Good,
So
good.
Well,
Thank
the
you.
good news
Appreciate it.
is no complaints was a very
Yeah.
positive. And
Yeah.
remember too, you're changing minds and it's
Yeah.
it's
no, I thought you did a great job.
Yeah,
awesome.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Great. So we can follow up with that. We will be talking with Paul, I guess, at the end of the month, so we can see how we can help push that issue forward. All
Yeah.
right, great.
So, two questions. Once you get that date, next meeting at TECA,
Uh-huh.
and you add that to the master.
Yes,
calendar
absolutely,
here.
yeah.
And secondly, what would be the action step or process for following up with getting volunteers? You said that they seemed responsive to participating in events. So
Yeah.
then we've got a lot of events coming up in May and April. And who would be the contact people? So if you could just follow up
think we-
afterwards. And give us
Yeah,
like the
I mean, I think
mechanism.
it's appropriate, if we know. Whenever the next, all right, so CRC cleanup on March 25th, like, I think it's appropriate. That they could distribute that event info through Paul, through
Right.
Newtown Square Business
So
Association.
whatever the mechanism is,
Yeah,
to make
yeah.
sure that
Communication,
information
yeah.
flows to them.
Exactly, I think people are eager to get involved, they just,
I spoke with Paul today about that, and
Oh,
we were
great.
talking about trying to coordinate because Newtown Square and Bloom, EAC, all of us have events and we need a plethora of volunteers at a quick notice sometimes. And he's working with the county program for those individuals who are trying to get some community service hours as well. So he's going to put together a list and we're going to try to coordinate that
A
with
list of,
potential volunteers and have like a master email list. We will work with them. We'll share that also with Parks and Rec
Mhm.
and trying to kind of gather the information and be able to quickly send it out to who's available.
Yeah.
And to those individuals who say they're interested in helping, will they actually show up to help? So that's something we briefly discussed today, but we're gonna definitely I will stay on that with Paul as well.
Also, one other conversation I had was with Giselle at Garrett Williamson.
Mhm.
Yes,
So they do their own tree plantings on their property with CRC,
yes.
I guess, and they were asking for help, for volunteers. So I don't know if we could include that in our calendar, I mean, I know it's
Yeah.
different groups, but if we're doing a tree planting or park cleanup through our activities and they're having their own, they just need volunteers, they
Right.
need bodies, so.
Do they coordinate with CRC through Lynn? Because I know Cindy deals with Lynn at CRC.
I don't know,
She's the
yeah.
coordinator for
Yeah.
the volunteers. So maybe if we provide her the channel for that, and that way, because we also use those individuals who help out.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure if they're doing this in conjunction with you.
Yeah.
But I can also alert Giselle to share that information with the master watershed stewards because they have a
Okay.
they put in events, but you talked about quick response, but the thing is, we need more advance notice. We
Yes.
don't want quick response.
I know, Paul
That's
likes
why
quick
we-
response, but we do need,
You know, there are occasions when that happens, but mostly as soon as these dates are settled, they should go out to the business.
Yeah, yeah.
I agree. That's why I'm pushing to get these dates because April and May is not that far away and things
Yeah.
quickly get taken over. So I have a brief list together of dates and actually, you know, we'll coordinate that at the end of the month. All right, next item 9.2, discussion and possible action on Aronimink Golf Club Phase 2 land development applications. Applicant may possibly present at the January 2023 Planning Commission meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review those plans that we were given? Any comment or discussion?
I thought that the engineer's report was very thorough and very detailed. And I appreciated the level of detail that he put in about some things that were missing from the pre and post water construction, water management. Fails, because I think that's important, given the fact that some of the construction is slopes, you can
Yes.
see on the picture.
Yes.
So I thought, you know, given the fact that this is a new engineer we're working with, but buttoned up.
Yes, I actually also, did anyone else get a chance to review the plans or thoughts on that, Joe?
I did look at it, no comment.
Yeah, I also, I mean,
look
not
good.
my field of
Right.
expertise at all. so.
I thought I was impressed with the level of detail that the our township engineer had presented. And looking at removing the existing pools and their plans for it. So I, of course, defer to the expert on that because I felt that we needed to kind of,
They're all looking the same place.
yeah,
Well, the engineer is really the expert on stormwater management. I think where we could perhaps take a comment and echoing what you said, Steve, is just flagging the desirability to not disturb steep and very steep slopes. However, when you look at where they are, you know, what can they do about it? You know, it's not like they have a lot of choice to build their pool somewhere else. I mean, they're removing and replacing existing infrastructure. The clubhouse is where it is, you know, they're not going to move these things anywhere else. So that's why I thought, you know, is there much point to, I mean, I guess we could issue a letter that just flags that very, you know, steep and very steep slopes are very vulnerable and it's very important to be very careful. And that's why I thought I was glad that the engineer was careful, because given the fact that they are probably going to go ahead and disturb everything anyway, best to do it as responsibly as possible. And here we are.
I did have a question to see what sustainable practices they were going to use, if they could incorporate any type of rain gardens or any other. I know they said they were going to control their water basin and they had, did you see that in the report?
One thing I did notice on the landscape plan was that, and I didn't like count trees or anything, because I know that now the Shade Tree Commission gets the tree aspect. And I've seen some of the other reports from the township arborist, so I feel that's in good hands. But you know, they had little rows of shrubs like soldiers, like right around the edge of the pool deck. And that led to a steeper area of slope. And I just thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if they could just do like a whole hillside of shrubs or grasses or something like that to have more vegetation there. I don't think anybody's walking on that grass or anything, but I don't really know that that's within our purview.
You know, what I would say is you can always suggest something without saying it's required in our ordinance, but
Right.
we think this would be a benefit, you know, like
Mhm.
say, here's the benefit to it
Yeah.
and what might be the benefit. You know, one of the challenges that this particular project looks at is that everything kind of goes down towards paper mill.
Yeah.
Paper mill is one of those areas where we have a lot of flooding problems. And so anything that they can do on their side to take an area and enhance water retention is always going to be appreciated.
Which might be shrubs or perennials or things
Yeah.
like that.
Sedges, grass,
Sedges,
sedges.
Yeah, okay,
So I don't think it's a problem to suggest it. I think how you suggest it becomes the issue,
Yeah,
right?
and
You know,
positively suggesting
Yeah.
any sustainable, any
though
things they
we,
can.
though we don't have an ordinance that requires
You know.
this would be, this might be a good thing, particularly in light of where it's located and how it impacts.
And also because it is a golf course, there are many areas that they have that's not part of the greenways, that there's opportunities that they can convert some of that meadows.
Mhm.
Because the front area is all open grass. I mean, that could be, meadow consideration. Again, all we can do is ask kindly and ask them to consider it, but that slope is rather severe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what would be the timing on this?
So I believe this one is on the planning commission next Thursday.
Yes.
So that gives you the time frame.
So therefore, if I draft something and
Yeah, I think what you want to walk out of here tonight is what is it that you're drafting? You know, I think as long as you say, these are the 5 things that we want in the draft letter, and you keep it to those 5 things, you can circulate it just to make sure that everybody sees it. But it's not like you're trying to refine it. Tonight, you need to walk away with saying, these are the things that we think are, these are the recommendations we think are important. And what I'm hearing are pretty small. And we're working on getting a sheet for all of you that's like for each group that's a pretty straight, like, here's we recommend the project, or we approve the project. We just recommend these following things, or we see these following things that ought to be, that ought to be looked at. And I hear the planting on the hillside or on the steep slopes. If you have something else in particular, then that's what I would want. I think that's what you would want to walk away from tonight. And then all you're doing is taking what everybody said and putting it together.
so does this have to take the form of a motion?
It does.
Okay,
Alright. A motion was put forth to have Cindy draft a comment letter that will be outlining some of our suggestions and support.
Yeah, I think what I would look for is a motion that specifically states what it is that you're hoping are in, like, you may take a few more minutes just to make sure you know what it is that you want, and then have a motion that covers that.
okay, what I would do is I would cite 2 concerns. The one concern is that there significant water runoff that contributes to flooding in the paper mill area. The second concern is that the construction will disrupt steep and very steep slopes, and will continue to be there afterwards. They're a contributor to the runoff. The suggestions or the action items that they could consider would be to enhance infiltration and promote like biodiversity by considering plantings on the sloped areas other than turf grass that might include shrubs, grasses, and other.
Sounds good, to mitigate the runoff.
Okay, so I would Cindy has put forth a motion that she will draft a letter with the issues of retaining the stormwater management on Paxton Hill, asking them to consider steep slope of vegetation, and any best practices that Cindy will tie down in terms of sustainable initiatives that would better serve this project.
It's not Paxton.
Aronimink, yes, Aronimink, but I'm saying, paper mill.
Paper mill.
Paper mill.
Yeah,
So the motion's put forth, all in favor,
Was there a second? I'm
A
sorry.
second.
second,
I
Cindy
second.
second, all in favor,
I.
any
And
opposed?
when does that need to be where?
Next Wednesday?
Well, probably either Monday and Tuesday, so we can get it on the agenda ahead of time.
Planning
For the
commission,
planning
and
commission.
then.
Remember, though, this is really directed to the board of supervisors.
Yes.
You're not recommending to the
Right.
planning commission, you're recommending to the supervisors.
And so why is it tied to their meeting?
Just, I think that what I'm recommending because things come out of the planning, but the board, like if your comments get incorporated into the planning's comments, I think it just adds to the
Wait,
weight of what it is. And, you know, I mean, it doesn't have to be. If it doesn't get there, then it will go into the board's packet and it'll be on the
Okay.
13th of February. But again, if all of these are kind of in play, then when the planning commission does their review, and if they say, like a lot of times the planning commission will say, we recommend with the letter dated from the engineer XXXX, and we would include the EAC's recommendation letter. You know, like if they were to do all of that, they could wrap it all into one bundle to send to the board. And that's the ultimate goal. But if it doesn't happen, I understand timing of
Yeah.
meetings, because like, for example, the Trails and Greenways meeting is actually afterwards. And so theirs is actually going to happen after the planning commission meeting. There's no way that it could be before, but that way, when it goes in and, you know, whatever gets there, if the planning commission makes note of it, it just adds value to it in that way.
and who should this be sent to?
You would send it to Rose. Rose will make sure
Rose.
it gets to Heather.
Okay, great.
Great. Next item, 9.3, discussion and possible action of Ooh LaLa Salon at 3831 West Chester Pike for conditional use application. This actually has at the cottages in Ellis Preserve. And I don't know if everyone had a chance to review the documents that were sent out to us.
Call this one.
I believe it's the Mary Lyon Cottage at Ellis Preserve. And they're basically looking to establish a beauty salon in there. And that is, I don't know if the Historic Society is weighing in that as
Yeah, the
well.
Historic Society is going to weigh in. It's not an official historic building on our township's list of historics, but they're going to weigh in. And they're going before the Historic Society. I don't know of anything on the outside that's being done. I've read this. I had them put it on your agenda just in case there was something that I missed and you all looked at it and went, oh my goodness, this is, you know,
Mhm.
I didn't see anything on the outside. This is a cottage that's has been used, I believe, as like overnight stays for
Yes,
SAP.
yes.
But is now been turned back over to the Equus Group. And they're looking at, like I said, I believe it's a first floor business. The only concern that we had from a township's point of view, and that I think for anything in the future would be, do they have an access to the second floor if they were to ever do that, that would not be through the salon, because we wouldn't want to see an exterior stairwell being put in or an exterior addition being put on to access the building. But
Right.
that would be the only thing that we would be concerned with. But I don't think they're doing anything on the outside that's a real change. Everything on the inside, I don't know that there's anything for you to weigh in on at that spot, but that's where we are.
I know I looked at the plans and it sounded like there was nothing in particular in terms of the location itself. I was concerned only because of, I know there was a salon proposed at the old, what's the name of that? What's the
On
name?
West Chester Pike,
The new,
on 252.
No, the old Knights of Columbus Hall.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a proposed salon. I know that.
That's
we have-
Christopher's is moving
Yes.
there.
Yeah, and there's multiple salons in there, and that was my only concern, like, are we overdoing it? But I didn't see anything.
You know.
Yeah.
Hopefully, these businesses are taking into account what's happening in their area. I am not going to
Oh, I
determine
know.
whether it's a good business decision,
Um,
because I could promise you there's one person that won't be a user of either one of the two.
Oh, grow it out.
I'm sorry,
Might enjoy those. but-
at the rate I'm losing it, it probably won't even matter, so.
Well, listen, they have a lovely name, so we wish them luck, and I hope that, if anyone had any other issues to discuss
No,
on that one.
I agree with your impression. It seemed like it was all internal.
Yes. Item 9.4, discussion and possible action of the Marville Land Development Application. Does anyone want to weigh in on this?
First of all, real quick, I just want to share with you what I hope you all know what this is. It's going to be a relatively small building being added on the spot. It's a lot of parking. But it's at the down at the Veterans Memorial. The purpose of the building is to be basically a VFW hall. And so a place, but it will also provide restrooms for events that are at the memorial. And so that's just kind of a quick overview of what's happening there in case you
Seems like
haven't
it's
looked
only
at it.
like 1,500 square feet or something.
I
like
think it's
that.
15, I thought it's 1,800, but
It's very small.
it's very small. There's a lot more, like I said, for as small as the building is, there's a lot more parking that's the issue.
I think there's like 30 parking spaces.
Yeah.
Where does this stand in the review process?
So this will be going to the planning commission also on Monday night. I mean, next Thursday night. I said Monday night, wrong meeting. And so that's where it stands in the process.
Because what a couple things to me were puzzling and troubling about. One is it's a very small building. I mean, I was running the numbers. It's like 40 by 60, 40 by 50. I mean, it's a little building.
Yes.
Like, what's the point? And then there's 30 parking spaces. To me, it seemed like he's building a parking lot. And then if you scroll down and you keep going, you'll see that there are there. Okay, there, look at that.
Yeah.
That is, why is that picture in there?
It
Because
should
that
not be.
shows-
I think we've told them, was this not redone?
That shows like a 3,000 square foot office building with a massive parking
Yeah,
lot.
we told them they are either coming in for one or they're either coming in for one or they're coming in for both. My understanding is if you go back up to the next one, that is actually the revision that they've made and that will be what's approved.
Well, then they need to get that other stuff out.
I agree.
And then if you go down further, so there you see the massive amount of parking.
Yeah.
And then you keep going, and on one of the other pictures, okay,
stop
there,
there, right?
stop there. Those long rectangular gray areas are all underground stormwater retention basins. They're huge. Why would you need that? And that's why this plan was very confusing. Is that
As you
just
keep
for the
going.
30 space parking lot, or is that for the huge parking lot?
I can't speak to that. The engineer would be able to speak to that. We have told them that they have, the plan has to be stand on its own. We're not, if the application is for I thought it was 1,800 square foot, it might be 1,500 square feet, is for that particular piece. And it needs to stand on its own in that way.
I agree, but to me, this backs up is this the camel's nose under the tent.
Well, and that's why the township's
always been the
position has been, if it doesn't come, and I don't know, like, I know that we're waiting on some stuff, but that's what they've been told. And if it doesn't come back that way, I'm sure that it will not be approved until it is that way.
Because the other things I was thinking of is more parking, really need more parking. And I'm sure there is some sort of ratio in the code that says how much parking you need. And then I think about the fact that right on the other side of that road is all the parking for those offices that are there that probably get very little utilization. Do we really need every building to have its own parking lot that gets utilized rarely? Can't people walk across the road and use that parking? I'm sure there's all kinds of liability issues because that other parking belongs to someone else. So then I thought, okay, if you have to have this parking lot, are there ways you could make it more green? Because he's got these little typical peninsulas with trees plopped in the end, which are barely gonna survive. And what is our code around parking lots? And do they all have to have like the 5-inch high concrete buffer? Why can't they have like the design to prevent infiltration? You go to the Haverford Rec Center, you can see beautiful examples of that. More and more parking lots are being designed that way. So it's like, how can we ask that the parking lot have a different design?
Well, we can recommend.
Well, I think you
permeable
can recommend,
surfaces.
again, you're right, our code right now, our ordinance actually calls for what they're doing. And so, but I think that we could say, from a environmentally friendly way to look at it, we would like to see X, Y, and Z. And see what they, they're not required to do it, but we can make a recommendation.
If the code calls for something, how can I ask for something that goes against the code?
Well, I think that, one is if the
If they
board,
want approval.
if the board would agree with it with an approval, it might be that we would move in that direction. We're looking at changing the code.
I
In
I
those
forget
areas.
what I have for like a year and I'm wondering what. are these
Yeah,
things?
well, it's on the back burner, but it's there. It's still out there. It's one of those things.
Well, aren't the ratios for like determining the parking lot size and all based on the old data? And they will be revised as.
Well, but I
irrelevant
will
to
say
those
that
other
one of
services?
the things that we've done is we've gone back and said, we want you to reserve spaces for the potential, but not necessarily build the spaces. So we did that over at BPG, with part of their plan. We had a section where I think there was supposed to be 30 or 40 spaces. And we said, don't build those 30 or 40 spaces. We just want you to make it as open space right now. And then if we determine in the future that it's needed, then you'd be asked to put it in. And so that's the kind of thing we've been trying to do. It works well when you have a developer who's going to continue to own the land. A developer who's going to sell the land makes it more difficult because then the new developer may not be in agreement with those things. And so that has to be a part of, has to be very clear in the plan, has to be laid out very clear in the agreements to make sure that it's, follows through. Easy with me right now. I've been here about 8 years. I remember a lot of things and, I can kind of keep on top of them. Someday I probably won't be here. Then Newtown will still be going on. And I'm trying to be nice how I say that, I'm not looking to leave, but it's someday I'm going to retire and
We won't let you, Steve.
but you know what I'm saying? So the knowledge will go away.
Yes.
And just like some of you may not be here on this committee anymore and knowledge will go away. And so that's where it's important to make sure we document well what we have and we do.
Well, I think people need to know that economies of scale of permeable surfaces are so different from even 10 years ago, 5 years ago. Those costs have come down significantly. So if we can suggest that or even ask that, it's something, it doesn't hurt to ask. And I think people are, especially developments or things, they're looking for green initiatives because residents are looking for them as well. And anyone that's coming to those places wants to see these. So,
Yeah.
Right. And it would be something that they could tout.
yes.
Yeah.
They have.
I think the
Gone.
biggest thing that is and I'm all for it, it's just what I'm hearing about the expense of maintaining it is the bigger challenge.
Yes.
And that's the biggest piece.
All right. So
All
if you
right.
put in native plants that grow deep roots. then they-
Native
don't
plants is
take-
not the expense. That's not what I'm worried about. You were talking about impervious
Right,
surfaces.
yes, but
for-
if you have those mini
Yeah,
areas in between.
Well, one other issue just to flag, which is a bigger issue, which we don't need to discuss today or be resolved, but when I see proposals like this for another office building, I wonder, is there some strategic planning functionality in the township that would have some sort of guidance or braking mechanism on the construction of things that we think are not in the best interest of the township. For example, why on earth would you need another office building when you've got Campus Boulevard with those buildings sitting vacant? I was just reading an article in the Times or the Atlantic or something that was saying that mayors of US cities, in some cases, have missed the boat. And they have been slow to recognize the changing demographics due to the pandemic, people working from home. And they think that, people are still going to flock to their communities, and it doesn't matter if, half of the buildings are sitting empty or the restaurants aren't there or whatever. And they're saying like, no, things have really changed. And I'm just thinking, in the whole scheme and how the township functions, is there any room for like the planning commission? Do they plan, like talk to developers like this and say, we really don't think we need more retail space with half the store sitting empty, or we really think we don't need more office space?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question, and, I can tell you, I've been having some of those conversations with some of the developers. I'm incredibly concerned about empty spaces that we have.
Yes.
If places aren't at least reasonably full, what does that mean about maintenance and all of those kind of things? And then what happens, going from there, what does it look like? And, the last thing we want to start doing is riding around our community and see a bunch of boarded up buildings because, whatever we built new, and, everybody likes new, right? But it's like, what can we do to maintain what we have and make sure that it's taken care of? And yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I agree with you. I mean, I've been having this conversation, individually with some of the board members, just saying, what are we going to do with areas like Campus Boulevard and those kind of things? Because it long term, what's the solution? And
Even St. Albans Circle. I mean,
oh yeah, I mean,
area's-
been having that conversation as well. I've been talking with some of the property owners there about what I think would do well. But I got to tell you, that's not what they come in with, and
Right.
it's amazing to me that there's developers who still think that office space is a premium, and I'm like, I don't know where it's coming in at. I mean, I do know that Newtown is a place that people want to be and that kind of thing. But I got to tell you,
We've got office space
we have office space,
in spades.
and even AmeriHealth, who put in for
A huge building.
1,500 people here in town, I can tell you they're not anywhere near close to that on a daily basis. Not anywhere near. And
has
SAP
changed.
is not anywhere near where they used to be. And I think you're right. I don't see that changing anytime soon. I'm not going to say it's never going to change. We have all these cycles. It may be that everybody's back in the office. I know some businesses are trying to push back on that. I also hear that the, employees are pushing back very hard that they don't want to do it. You hear about all these things like quiet quitting and all of those kind of things. I don't know where we're going to head with all of this. I just know that it's something that should be on our radar. We already have we already have office buildings that have been sitting empty since before I came.
Yes.
Here in the community, we have 2 on 252 that have been empty for as long as I can remember. I don't.
Which ones are
The
those?
ones that are across from the Springton Point shops or behind Muirwood, or in front of Muirwood. I mean,
Across from private Crassus Field or something?
yeah.
Yep.
I mean, they've been
And
empty.
Steve, you've got to think, how long
They were
can the
FDI.
owner of that building take that loss? And when are they going to walk away?
Well, I mean, I would argue that they basically have walked away. But anyway, the good news is it's not in complete disrepair, but they're empty. And it is a concern that we have and that we need to address and, you know, we need to look at. But the other side of it is, we can't make people do something, you know, like I can't make a property,
Decline to approve it?
excuse me,
Can't they decline to approve it?
on what basis? You know, I mean, if our zoning allows it, it's really hard to, unless we change the zoning to say that that's not allowed, and then the question becomes, what is allowed? I mean, you can't take away a property owner's right to develop. You know, you can't just arbitrarily just say, you can't put anything there. You know, and so,
But I
Well,
understood
maybe
you could put
sell it
in
to
barriers,
the-
let's say, saying all new buildings have to have solar, 100% solar, or things of that nature, which would slow down the
Sure.
process. And of
sure,
course,
you can do certain things like that, but my point is, you can't take, like, we can't take a piece of land and say it's undevelopable.
Right.
You know, we will lose that in court all day long. There's no question about that.
There must be ways that other communities take a stronger hand in shaping what development they allow to come in or to happen.
Well, you do it through your zoning. You do it through your zoning process, but you can't, you have to allow the state code says you have to allow all types of businesses and types of zoning somewhere within your community. I mean,
We probably do that.
we do
already
that.
right now.
We do that right now. But you can't, but I can't take a piece that's been zoned a certain way and then take it and make it so it's just not at all developable. You can't do that. I mean, there's laws against that. and
So
we'll
I don't
lose
have
that.
the answer. I'm just flagging.
Yeah, no, I get you. And I agree with you. I happen to agree 100%. Why would we build another office building in an area that's across the street from 16 or 19 office buildings that half of them are sitting empty?
At
You
a
know?
time when most workers don't want to go back to work.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, and my guess is they're not coming in. I mean, it's a concept plan of what he thought he was gonna do 20 years ago. I mean, the developer came into me when I started 8 years ago and said, here's what I want to do. And I said, okay, I'll, if you get the lease, I would support you doing it. And I'm still waiting to see the lease. And so, I mean, there's lots of things that, you know, I just don't, first of all, I don't think there's somebody to lease it, much less to have enough to build it. So,
and of course, it would be also a great option if we as taxpayers wanted to put the initiative to buy.
Yeah, what I was gonna say, how do we?
but you got it, I mean,
Right.
That would be
again,
something that, you know.
you
if we
can
wanna
do
make
that.
this
Willis
initiative-
Town just did that, right? They
Right.
voted to raise taxes to secure bonds to buy
Yeah.
that.
But then you look at our strategic plan, 94% of the tax residents here said they did not want you to increase their tax bill. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a
He
sensitive.
did for that.
Oh, yeah, look at, I mean, they want open space, but they don't want to pay for it. So you're at this situation where, you know,
it's a challenge.
yes.
But try to manage. it.
People want, yes, people want office buildings and, you know. what
Right.
can you do?
Well, I think today we have to watch our timing here. Guys, we're at 9. Okay, that.
I
was-
think if I were you, I would really focus on like this plan that you see here versus the one that includes the other.
Bigger
Yes.
one.
Because that's what I think they're going, I'm sorry, Stephen. But that, if you had comments on that piece, that's where I would focus my comments. I do believe it's going before the planning commission on next Thursday.
So should we make a motion to write a second brief letter about this? Citing the desire for them to consider more green design and plantings around the parking area.
And
And
reducing
permit
the number of parking spaces.
Well, I think that's what he's saying is the regulations require 30. So if you're saying.
I don't think I would comment on the number.
Yeah, because
But
we
I
have to
would
follow the
comment
codes.
more on the
Really
low
needs
impact
30
design.
when it's small.
All right, so a motion was made to have a comment letter drafted by Cindy regarding the Marville Land Development. And when would that be due by?
Again, if you want it before the
Okay.
planning commission, it'd be next week. If you want it just before the board,
And
probably
we
the 13th.
follow
of
up with
February.
recommendations for green initiatives, permeable, anything else?
Yeah,
that
green, low impact development.
That's-
Fine for the parking lot.
General, okay. Motion was put forth. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Cindy, for taking that. That's wonderful. 9.5 Garrett Williamson Land Development Application. An application has granted the township an extension for an indefinite period of time as a project has been put on hold while the applicant works through some issues in their end. No action at the time. All right, so I guess at that point, but is that something that it's financial issues that's holding that up, or is there some other issues? Is it going to be coming back to us, do you think?
Until they pull the application, it will be on your agenda
Okay.
as staying out there. They have not given us direction as to where they are. I suspect it's a multiple of issues, because if you recall, well, maybe you did, maybe it wasn't in the EAC, but I know it was in one of the committees that came up about, I do think part of it was here regarding the impact to the steep slopes for putting in the sewer line, I think came out of here. But there were some other things that came out as well in a couple of the other committees that recommended that they go back and look at a couple things. I think that they are looking at their plan a little bit, but I also think that the intent of coming in was to have an approved plan to go out and do fundraising. I think they're now saying there's too many changes. We probably need to try to take what we have, go do fundraising, and then come back in and take the steps it's going to take. Because it's going to cost them more than I think than what they thought just to get the plan approved and then take their next steps.
Okay, so will this item 9.5 be tabled for further?
I think that you don't have any action tonight
So-
because it says no action
Okay.
at this time. And I believe the same thing is true with the next one. If for
Yes.
some reason my sheet is cut off.
Go in the back.
we'll
Yep.
slow that.
No action
Go
at
in
this
the
time?
back.
All right, so, and let's just, for the sake of it, 9.6 was 311 Sawmill Land Development Application. The applicant will be appearing before the zoning hearing in June of 23, applicant for January of 2023. Applicant only presented sketch plans to the planning commission
Yeah.
in October, has submitted a preliminary land development plans.
They're going.
No action at this time.
Yeah, they're going before zoning tonight.
Okay.
My thoughts are, depending on what the zoning board decides, will determine what they do next.
Right. Action item number 10, public comment. No public to cannot comment on. Action number 11, items for the next agenda. Anyone have items for the next agenda they would like to report?
So I would say this, just so that you think about this, if you come up with items that you want for the next agenda, your chair is the person who helps us put that together, so everybody should get everything to Sheila. And then Sheila will be responsible to, we'll be talking about when we need it submitted and all of those kind of things, so that you know ahead of time. But we will need it submitted usually about a week in advance of when the meeting is, because we have to have everything out on Friday before.
Right.
And what's on, we're just reminder, what's on the agenda is what you're allowed to discuss. I allowed you guys to discuss some things tonight that really weren't on the agenda because you didn't really go into any deliberations on them. But if you're going to get into deliberations or anything like that, we have to make sure it's on the agenda. So if you want your group to make an action, make sure you get it to Sheila ahead of time so that she can get it to us so that we can do that. Bruce, that was one of those things that Bruce always kind of just did behind the scenes and was always working with you on. And just so I'm just kind of sharing with you. And Bruce was really good about that. He was working with whoever was doing that one ahead of time to make sure it was done and.
Prior
to that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So however Sheila decides to do that, but I'm just saying to you, just remember, if you want something, make sure you reach out to her to get it on. And you probably want to be doing it about 2 weeks before so that she has enough time to put things together. Because
Right.
we'll be doing it at least a week before.
I
We
will
meet
actually have the calendar events. We would love to have that for
Yeah.
the agenda for that, just so we have, and if anyone can get back to us on any dates, Cindy, you have some potential rain gardens dates. Janet, you're down for a possible composting event, you said this year, if you just have tentative dates and if you could
Okay,
coordinate yep.
bird walks.
bird walk and then added plan. Any dates that you have, can you get to me actually by the 28th if possible? So when I'm at that meeting, with the other chairs, we can at least communicate that and then make sure it's on our calendar events. We will also look to see how we can coordinate with Parks and Rec and with Newtown Square and Bloom. And any and all suggestions, I am here.
So, I think we had talked about sending out the minutes prior, sometime within the month, rather than waiting until the last minute to get the minutes. Not any pressure, Joe, but you know, if it could
Joe,
come out
by
in 2 weeks.
8 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I'd
Jeff
like-
would like to
I want
have.
action items, but I want- yeah.
So if we had them like 2 weeks before the next meeting, so we could.
That would be
kind of
perfect.
review.
And if not, I will send Janet to your house.
All right, I'm withdrawing.
All right, and item 12, adjournment. I take a motion to adjourn the meeting. So moved. Woo-hoo! 6:10, baby. We're done.
Way to go, Sheila.
Well, we're good.